Gerald, please don't go home today. The words came through my phone at exactly 7 that morning. Not a greeting, not a good morning. Just fear. Raw fear. For a moment, I thought I had heard my daughter-in-law wrong. Emily, what are you talking about? Her breathing trembled on the other end. Please, she whispered. Just trust me. Stay away from the house until tonight. Then the line went dead. I stood frozen beside my truck in the grocery store parking lot, staring at the phone in my hand. Something wasn't right. In 68 years of life, I had learned the difference between worry and terror. Emily was terrified, and the thing that scared me most wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like someone was standing nearby listening. Like she wasn't supposed to be making that call. My name is Gerald Walker. I'm 68 years old. A retired machinist. Widower. Father. And until that morning, I believed my son Michael would never betray me. Funny how one day can destroy a lifetime of certainty. As I sat in my truck trying to make sense of Emily's warning, my mind drifted back to the dinner we'd shared the night before. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Michael grilled steaks in the backyard. Emily made potato salad. We laughed. We talked. Everything appeared normal. But looking back now, I can see the warning signs were everywhere. Michael kept asking strange questions. Questions about my finances. Questions about my will. Questions about the house. At the time, I brushed them off. What father wouldn't? You want to believe your children care about your future. You want to believe their interest comes from love. Now I know better. Because by the end of that day, I would discover that Michael hadn't been asking questions because he cared. He had been gathering information, preparing, planning, and if Emily hadn't made that phone call, I might have lost everything I spent 40 years building. Have you ever ignored a warning and later realized it saved your life? Let me know in the comments, because what happened next still keeps me awake some nights. And if you're ready for this journey, tell me where you're watching from. Hit the like button, subscribe to Dorian's Revenge Stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Because trust me, what I discovered waiting at my house that evening was far worse than anything I could have imagined. The longer I sat in that parking lot, the worse the feeling became. You know that feeling when something is wrong, but you can't prove it. Like a storm is coming even though the sky still looks clear. That's exactly how I felt. I tried calling Emily back. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. Then again. Nothing. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. Emily had never ignored my calls before. Never. Especially after making a call like that. I started my truck and drove aimlessly for a while, trying to clear my head. But my thoughts kept returning to the previous evening. The dinner. The questions. The strange looks Emily kept giving Michael. At the time, I had barely noticed them. Now they replayed in my mind like scenes from a movie. The more I remembered, the more uncomfortable I became. The house I live in isn't fancy. It's a 2-story home on the edge of town. My wife, Susan, and I bought it 37 years ago. Back then, neither of us had much. I worked overtime whenever I could. Susan clipped coupons. We skipped vacations, drove old cars, saved every dollar we could. Eventually, the mortgage was paid off. Every room in that house carries a memory. The hallway where Michael took his first steps. The kitchen where Susan baked birthday cakes every year. The living room where we spent Christmas mornings together. After Susan passed away 3 years ago, that house became more than a home. It became the last place where I still felt close to her. That's why Michael's questions bothered me when I thought about them again. Especially one. We were sitting at the table after dinner when he casually asked, "Dad, have you ever considered putting the house into a family trust?" I remember laughing. "A little late for financial planning, isn't it?" He smiled. Not a normal smile. A forced smile. The kind people give when they're trying too hard to appear relaxed. "I just want to make sure everything's protected." Protected. Funny word. Because now I was beginning to wonder if he meant protected for me or protected for himself. As the morning dragged on, I stopped at a diner outside town, a place Susan and I used to visit every Saturday. The waitress recognized me immediately. "Morning, Gerald." I forced a smile, but I couldn't eat. My coffee grew cold while I stared out the window. Every few minutes I checked my phone. Nothing. No call. No text. No explanation. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to drive past my house. Not go inside. Just look. Just enough to ease my mind. The closer I got, the harder my heart pounded. Maybe Emily was overreacting. Maybe this was all some misunderstanding. Maybe there was a simple explanation. I wanted that to be true. God knows I wanted it to be true. But when I turned onto my street, I immediately knew something was wrong. There were two unfamiliar vehicles parked in my driveway. One black SUV, one silver sedan. I slowed down. Neither vehicle belonged to Michael. Neither belonged to Emily. And neither had ever been at my house before. I drove past without stopping, trying not to be noticed. As I passed, I glanced toward the front window, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were people inside my house. Not one person, several, moving from room to room, carrying folders, boxes, paperwork, like they owned the place. I kept driving until I reached the end of the block. Then I pulled over. My pulse was racing. Who were they? What were they doing inside my home? And why had Emily begged me not to come back? Then my phone vibrated. A text message. From Emily. Only 4 words. "They're doing it today." I immediately called. This time she answered. She was crying. "Emily, what's happening?" For a few seconds she couldn't speak. Then she finally whispered, "I'm sorry, Gerald." "Sorry for what?" "My husband has been lying to you for months." Every muscle in my body tightened. "What are you talking about?" The silence that followed felt endless. Then she said the words that changed everything. "The house isn't what they're after." I felt my stomach turn. "What do you mean?" Her voice cracked. "Gerald, they're after everything." I thought I understood what she meant. I was wrong. Because what Emily revealed next would expose a betrayal so deep, so calculated, that even now it feels impossible to believe. And the worst part, the people inside my house weren't strangers. They were there because my own son had invited them. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they were hiding something from you? If so, tell me in the comments. Because what Emily told me next shattered every belief I had about family. And by the time she finished speaking, I realized my life was about to change forever. I sat in my truck, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Emily," I said, "tell me exactly what's going on." She took a shaky breath. "For months, Michael has been drowning in debt." The words hit me hard, but not hard enough to explain what I had just seen. Debt from what? The business. Michael owned a small construction company. At least, that's what I thought. The last few years, he'd always claimed things were going well. New contracts, new equipment, new opportunities. I had been proud of him. Proud that he had built something of his own. But according to Emily, most of it had been a lie. "The company started losing money almost 2 years ago," she said. He kept borrowing to cover losses. Then he borrowed more to cover those loans. A knot formed in my stomach. How bad is it? For several seconds she didn't answer. Then she whispered, "Over $600,000. I nearly dropped the phone. 600,000. I couldn't even process that number. Why didn't he tell me? Because he thought he could fix it. And now, her voice broke, now he's desperate. I looked back toward my house in the distance, the black SUV, the silver sedan, the strangers walking through rooms that contained my entire life. What exactly are they doing inside? Another pause. Then Emily said something that made my blood run cold. They've convinced him your signature isn't necessary. I blinked. What? He found people willing to help him transfer assets before creditors come after him. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Transfer assets. My assets. My house. My savings. Everything Susan and I spent decades building. Everything. Suddenly dozens of strange moments from the past year started making sense. Michael asking about bank accounts. Michael offering to help organize my paperwork. Michael insisting on knowing where important documents were stored. None of it had been innocent. Every question had been part of a plan. Every conversation had been gathering information. And now that plan was happening inside my home. Have you ever realized that someone was preparing to betray you long before you noticed the signs? Looking back, the clues always seem obvious. But when love is involved, we often ignore what is right in front of us. I wish I had, because what Emily revealed next wasn't just financial betrayal. It was something far worse, something so cruel that I actually questioned whether I knew my own son at all. And when she finally told me what Michael had been telling people behind my back, I felt a level of heartbreak I wouldn't wish on anyone. I swallowed hard. Emily, what has Michael been telling people? For a moment, all I heard was her breathing. Then she said it. He's been telling them you're starting to lose your memory. The world seemed to stop. What? My voice barely came out. He told investors. He told lenders. He even told some family members. I felt sick. My memory is fine. I know that, Gerald. Her voice cracked again. But he's been saying you're becoming confused and that you're letting him handle your affairs. I leaned back in my seat, staring through the windshield. The betrayal hit harder than anything else. Not the money, not the debt, not even the people inside my house. This was different. Because Michael wasn't just trying to take what belonged to me. He was trying to erase my credibility. To make people doubt me before I even knew there was a problem. I remembered a family barbecue 3 months earlier. My cousin had jokingly asked if I was still remembering everybody's names. At the time, I laughed. Now I wondered where that joke had come from. Had Michael's planted those seeds months ago? Had he been building this story piece by piece? The more I thought about it, the worse it became. He said if anyone questioned the paperwork, he'd explain that you were having memory lapses, Emily continued. I closed my eyes. My own son. The boy I taught to ride a bicycle. The boy I stayed up with when he had nightmares. The boy whose hand I held at his mother's funeral. And now he was telling people I couldn't be trusted to manage my own life. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you would have done anything for? If you have, you know the pain isn't anger at first. It's heartbreak. Because the person hurting you is someone you never imagined would. I looked back toward my house. A house filled with memories. A house Susan loved. A house strangers were walking through right now. And suddenly another question entered my mind. One that terrified me. What if they've already signed something? Emily went silent. Then she whispered, "Gerald, that's what I've been trying to tell you." My heart sank. Because according to what she had discovered late the night before, the paperwork had already begun, and somewhere inside my house was a document carrying a signature that looked exactly like mine. Except I had never signed it. I felt a chill run through my body. "A forged signature?" I asked. Emily lowered her voice even further. "Yes." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was my own breathing. Then she continued. "Last night, Michael fell asleep on the couch. His laptop was open. I listened carefully. I wasn't trying to snoop, Gerald. I swear. You don't have to explain. But I saw scanned copies of your driver's license, your bank statements, property records, everything. My stomach twisted. Those documents had been locked inside a filing cabinet in my office, a cabinet only a handful of people knew about. One of them was Michael. "He scanned all of it weeks ago," Emily said. "How do you know?" "Because the files were dated." I felt physically sick. This wasn't a desperate decision made overnight. This had been planned, carefully, methodically, for weeks, maybe months. The realization hurt more than I can describe, because a stranger stealing from me would have been easier to accept. But my own son, that was something else entirely. Then Emily said something that made my heart race. "There's more." I closed my eyes. Of course there was. There always is. The people inside the house aren't just paperwork processors. What are they? They work for a private investment group. I frowned. "What does that mean?" "They've been negotiating with Michael." "Negotiating what?" "The equity in your home." I nearly dropped the phone. The equity. The value Susan and I had spent decades building. The security that was supposed to carry me through retirement. The inheritance we hoped would someday bless future generations. Michael wasn't trying to borrow against it. He was trying to leverage it, use it, risk it, without my permission. I stared at the steering wheel. The betrayal kept getting deeper. Every answer revealed a worse question. Have you ever noticed how the truth often arrives in layers? Just when you think you've uncovered the worst part, another layer appears beneath it. That's exactly what was happening. And unfortunately, the next layer was the most painful yet, because Emily finally revealed why she had decided to betray her husband and warn me. Not because she suddenly discovered the truth. Not because she had just learned about the debt. No, she had known something was wrong for weeks. What changed was what Michael said the night before. A single sentence. One sentence that convinced her she could no longer stay silent. When she repeated those words to me, I felt my entire view of my son begin to crumble. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about character. It was about morality. And it was about how far someone is willing to go when desperation takes control. I sat silently as Emily gathered herself. Then she finally told me what happened the night before. Michael thought I was asleep. My stomach tightened. But I heard him talking on the phone. Talking to who? I don't know. The fear in her voice returned immediately. But I heard every word he said. I gripped the phone tighter. What did he say? For a few seconds she couldn't answer. When she finally did, her voice was barely above a whisper. He said once everything was signed, you'd have no choice but to accept it. My heart sank. And then? Emily hesitated, as if repeating the words physically hurt. He laughed. That alone told me everything. Because when someone is forced into a terrible decision, they don't laugh. When someone is trapped, they don't celebrate. But Michael had laughed, and then came the sentence that changed everything. He said, The old man won't know what hit him until it's too late. I felt something break inside me. Not anger, not yet. Something deeper. Disappointment. The kind that only comes when someone you love chooses to become someone you no longer recognize. I remembered teaching Michael how to drive. I remembered helping him move into his first apartment. I remembered standing beside him at his wedding. Every memory crashed into me at once. And suddenly, I wondered how many of those years had been real. Had I failed somewhere? Had I missed something important? Or had desperation simply transformed him into someone else? If you're a parent watching this, let me ask you something. Do you think people are born dishonest? Or do difficult circumstances slowly push them there? I genuinely love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because even now, I still don't know the answer. Emily interrupted my thoughts. There's one more thing. I took a deep breath. What? He said if you resisted, he'd tell everyone your judgment couldn't be trusted. I closed my eyes. There it was again. The same plan, the same fly. Destroy my credibility, control the narrative. Take away my voice before I could defend myself. That wasn't panic. That wasn't fear. That was strategy. And strategies don't happen by accident. Suddenly, my phone beeped. A new message appeared. Unknown number. Attached was a photograph. I opened it. The image showed my dining room table, covered with legal documents. And sitting at the center of those papers was something that made my blood run cold. A document carrying my name, my address, and what appeared to be my signature. Except it wasn't mine. At least not entirely. Someone had practiced it, copied it, studied it, and they had become frighteningly good at it. The moment I saw that photograph, I realized one thing. If I didn't act immediately, I might be too late to stop what was already in motion. The second I saw that forged signature, I knew I couldn't sit there any longer. Whatever was happening inside my house had already gone too far. I started the truck. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from disbelief. The entire drive back toward my house felt surreal. Every memory of Michael seemed to flash through my mind. His first baseball game, his high school graduation, the day he called me crying because he couldn't afford his first apartment. Every time he needed help, I had been there, without hesitation, without conditions. Because that's what parents do. We sacrifice, we protect, we believe. And maybe that's why betrayal hurts so much. Because it weaponizes the love you freely gave. As I turned onto my street, I immediately noticed something new. Another vehicle, a white luxury sedan, parked directly in front of my house. Whoever was inside wasn't there earlier. The operation was growing, and that terrified me. I parked 2 houses away and watched. 3 people walked out of my front door. One carried a briefcase. Another carried a stack of folders. The third was speaking on a phone. They looked professional, confident, like they were conducting legitimate business. The problem was simple. No legitimate business was supposed to be happening inside my home. Then my phone rang. It was Emily again. Where are you? Outside. Don't go in yet. I frowned. Why? Her voice lowered. Because I just found something. A fresh wave of anxiety hit me. What now? I checked Michael's email. I closed my eyes. Part of me wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. What did you find? When she spoke, her words came fast. There are contracts. What kind of contracts? Agreements showing what everyone gets after the transaction closes. I froze. Everyone gets. Not Michael. Everyone. Meaning multiple people were involved. Multiple people expected to profit. Multiple people knew exactly what they were doing. The realization made my stomach turn. This wasn't a desperate son making a terrible mistake. This was a coordinated plan, a plan with partners, investors, participants, people willing to benefit from a fraud against an elderly man. Have you ever discovered that a problem was much bigger than you originally thought? Sometimes the scariest moment isn't finding the truth. It's realizing how many people already know it. And unfortunately, Emily wasn't finished. Because among those emails was one message that changed everything. A message sent only hours earlier. A message proving that Michael knew exactly what he was doing. And when I heard the contents of that email, any remaining doubt disappeared. Because for the first time all day, I stopped a desperate son and started seeing someone willing to destroy his own family to save himself. I stared at the steering wheel while Emily read the email aloud. Every word felt like another crack forming in the foundation of everything I thought I knew about my son. The email had been sent at 5:42 that morning, just over an hour before Emily called me. It was from Michael, and it wasn't written like someone who was scared. It wasn't written like someone trapped by debt. It was written like someone managing a business deal. The owner won't be present during the signing window, he wrote. The transfer team can proceed as planned. The owner. Not my father. Not Gerald, the owner. I felt my chest tighten. 38 years of raising a child. 38 years of birthdays, sacrifices, scraped knees, school plays, Christmas mornings, and family dinners. And now I had been reduced to a business obstacle. A problem to be managed, an owner, nothing more. Emily continued reading. The memory issue explanation has already been accepted by the necessary parties. I felt physically ill. So it was true. Michael hadn't just lied once. He had built an entire story around my supposed mental decline. A story that other people had accepted. A story that gave him cover. A story designed to silence me before I even knew I needed to defend myself. Have you ever discovered someone was telling lies about you behind your back? Not small lies, not misunderstandings, but lies carefully designed to damage your reputation. If you have, you understand how helpless it can feel at first. Because the hardest part isn't correcting the lie. It's realizing how many people already believe it. I looked toward my house again. The front door opened. A man in a grey suit stepped outside. He spoke briefly with another man near the luxury sedan. Then both disappeared back inside. Whatever was happening, it was reaching its final stage. There's more, Emily said. Of course there was. There always seemed to be more. The email mentions a notary arriving at 3 o'clock. I checked the time. 2:11 p.m., less than an hour. My pulse accelerated. That meant the paperwork wasn't complete yet. There was still time, but not much. For the first time all day, a small spark of hope appeared. Then Emily shattered it. There are already preliminary approvals. My stomach dropped. How many? Several. I leaned back against the seat. The deeper we dug, the bigger the operation became. This wasn't one forged document. This wasn't one bad decision. This was a network, multiple people, multiple approvals, multiple opportunities where someone should have questioned what was happening. Yet somehow the machine kept moving forward. The machine Michael had built. Then something occurred to me. A question I should have asked hours ago. Emily. Yes, why are you still there? Silence. For several seconds. Then she answered. Because I was afraid. Her voice cracked. And suddenly I realized she had been carrying this burden alone. For weeks. Maybe longer. Trying to save her marriage. Trying to protect me. Trying to believe Michael would come to his senses. I kept hoping he'd stop, she whispered. I kept hoping he'd wake up and realize what he was doing. I didn't know what to say. Because part of me understood. Love makes people hopeful. Love makes people wait. Love makes people believe things can still be fixed long after logic says otherwise. And Emily had loved my son. Enough to stay. Enough to fight for him. Enough to give him chance after chance. But eventually, everyone reaches a breaking point. The night before had been hers. When he said you'd never know what happened until it was too late, she said quietly, I realized he wasn't trying to solve a problem anymore. I closed my eyes. She was right. This wasn't survival. This wasn't desperation. This was greed. The line had been crossed. And once certain lines are crossed, you can never fully return. A movement near the house caught my attention. The front door opened again. This time Michael stepped outside. For a moment, I just stared. My son, standing on the same front porch where he used to wait for the school bus. The same porch where Susan took first day of school photographs. The same porch where he stood beside me after her funeral. And yet the man standing there now felt like a stranger. He checked his phone, looked around, then smiled, actually smiled, as though everything was going exactly according to plan, as though my life's work was simply another transaction, as though betrayal had become normal. The sight hit harder than anything Emily had told me, because until that moment, part of me still wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding. Part of me wanted to believe there was still a good explanation. But that smile destroyed those hopes. He wasn't being manipulated. He wasn't being pressured. He wasn't being forced. He was choosing this. And that realization changed everything. Then my phone vibrated. A new message. This one from an unknown number. No greeting, no explanation. Just a photograph. I opened it. My heart nearly stopped. The image showed a document spread across my dining room table. At the bottom was my forged signature. But that wasn't what terrified me. What terrified me was the line directly above it. Because according to that document, ownership of my home was about to be transferred, and the scheduled signing time was only 43 minutes away. I finally understood why Emily had begged me not to come home, because if I had walked in unprepared that morning, I might have walked straight into a trap designed to take everything I owned. And now I had less than an hour to stop it. I didn't wait another second. I started the truck and drove straight toward my house. The time for watching was over. The time for wondering was over. Whatever happened next, I needed to face it. As I pulled into the driveway, several heads turned toward me through the front window. The reaction was immediate. Confusion, concern, panic. Clearly, they hadn't expected me to arrive. I stepped out and walked toward the front door. Every step felt heavier than the last. Not because I was afraid, because I knew that once I crossed that threshold, nothing in my family would ever be the same again. The moment I entered, the room went silent. Papers covered my dining table. Strangers sat in chairs that belonged to Susan and me, and standing in the middle of it all was Michael, my son. His face turned pale. "Dad!" I looked directly at him. No. That single word stopped him cold. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then one of the suited men stood up. Mr. Walker, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." I laughed. A bitter laugh. "The only misunderstanding is that you thought I wouldn't show up." The room became uncomfortable fast. Questions started flying. Documents were shuffled. Phones came out. People suddenly became nervous. And that's when the truth started unraveling. Because the moment I demanded identification and explanations, the confidence disappeared. One person blamed another. Another claimed they had been misled. Someone insisted they thought I had already approved everything. The perfect plan began collapsing under its own weight. And Michael? He just stood there, silent, unable to defend what he'd done. Eventually, everyone left. The investors, the advisors, the people who thought they were about to profit from my home. One by one, they walked away, leaving only me and my son. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Michael finally looked at me. I was trying to save everything. I shook my head. No, his eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. My voice was calm, calmer than I expected. You were willing to lose yourself to save your money. That hit him harder than any shout ever could. Because deep down, he knew it was true. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and protecting yourself? Sometimes the hardest thing we can do is refuse to enable the people hurting us. That day, I chose to protect myself. Emily filed for divorce several months later. Michael lost the business, and our relationship was never the same again. But I kept my home. I kept my dignity, and I kept the values Susan and I spent a lifetime building. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying the person who betrayed you. It's refusing to let them destroy you. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And remember, the people who love you should never have to prove it by taking what belongs to you. They prove it by protecting what you've spent your life building.